Well, they all can't be cargo, can they? First of all, I hope everyone's having a safe Memorial Day. Apologies if I tend to trail off or have a little slurred speech from time to time. I had a bit of red wine during this movie. So, yeah, the Titan blows. Oh, so I went into this movie with not really any other knowledge about it with regards to its plot. I didn't even know who was starring in this movie. I had just heard there's this movie called The Titan on Netflix. It's not going over very well. But I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt to be like, you know what, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something of some merit despite major critics having major issues with it. Maybe I'll see past those issues. Maybe there'll be something of some kind of meaningful merit there for me. No. This movie has an interesting angle. It has an interesting idea underneath all of this bullshit. And there are some things that kind of sort of work. But the problem is that once you kind of absorb this angle or idea, it doesn't take long for you to immediately take it apart. And I understand you have to suspend disbelief when it comes to movies. You have to at times say like, well, yeah, logically this is not what someone would do, but for the sake of the movie happening, you have to be able to say people are going to do either reckless or illogical or nonsensical things. You have to kind of roll with that, accept that at times when it comes to movies. But when ultimately the entire arc of your plot just winds up going into that default mode, despite all of the big warning signs in this movie saying, hey, here's why this shouldn't happen. Hey, here's why this is the moral of the story. There's no moral to this story necessarily. It's just luck. Okay, basic rundown of the plot. And here's what I do like about this angle of the Titan is it takes place in 2048. Just a hair off from 2049, which is home to a much better science fiction movie. 2048, we are overpopulated up the wazoo on Earth. There's famine. There is global conflict all over the place. There is this joint effort between NATO with consultation from NASA to populate one of Saturn's moons, Titan. Basically, Thanos doesn't exist in this universe and hasn't killed off half of the Earth's population, so the only way for us to deal with overpopulation is to ferry some of our people over to Titan to colonize one of Saturn's moons. And this is a program that Sam Worthington enters to speed up the evolutionary process of humans in order for them to be adaptable to the environment on Titan, because apparently Titan has the closest atmosphere, the closest environmental conditions to Earth. This is a program headed by Tom Wilkinson, who basically puts all of these people who have been through some sort of traumatic event where they persevered through the extremes offered on Earth. In Sam Worthington's case, he went through the Syrian desert in a combat mission, stranded for 3 days without food or water, and made it out okay. So it centers around these people who are entered into this program who have survived the extremes, and injects them with different enzymes and formulas to turn them essentially into Captain Americas, to turn them into Supermen, as even Tom Wilkinson says, to turn them into people who can survive and adapt and manage the environment on Titan. That is an interesting idea that I really haven't seen in a lot of sci-fi movies. Usually it's we have to terraform the planet. We have to terraform this moon. We have to do something like, say, in The Martian and things like that, where we have to prove we can grow things here on Mars, or we have to be able to set up some kind of habitat that can be managed easily and efficiently on this alien terrain. I can't recall. I'm sure there are movies out there that have done this, but I can't recall one off the top of my head that has taken this approach of, hey, the human needs to change. The body needs to evolve and needs to adapt in order to survive the extremes of a foreign environment. So I like that. I like the initial idea of this movie. But then it's when you get into the details surrounding this program that everything immediately falls apart. First off, they allow all of these people in the program who are going through these physical changes, these chemical changes, these genetic changes, they allow them to bring their families. They allow them to live in the peaceful gated community where they can have barbecues and cookouts and luxurious palaces for themselves while they're being injected on a daily basis with God knows what, while they're going through extremes and vomiting up blood and everything like that, while they're going through wild mood swings. Yeah, sure, why not? Bring the wife and kids. Sounds like a hell of a good time, right? About the point where things start to take a turn and you see that the subjects are having a very negative effect, or experiencing negative side effects to this treatment, to this program, you start to think, okay, there's some ulterior motive here. It's not about populating tidy. It's about maybe creating a race of super soldiers that can destabilize some of the more chaotic governments or chaotic civilizations on Earth. It's about kind of creating a new world order with these super soldiers. Like, that's where I thought it was going. Because Tom Wilkinson in this movie is unnecessarily malevolent. You think there's something going, you feel like there's something else going on with his character, that, oh no, he's got ulterior motives to this program where he wants people to be able to hold their breath for 40 minutes underwater, swim like Aquaman, have bat wing membranes underneath their armpits, and have cat eyes. Yeah, this is stuff that happens. You'd think there's something else going on, but no. Big reveal here. It just turns out he's a really shitty professor or scientist and has no idea what he's doing and is just hoping for the best. Your brain immediately starts to undo the scenario immediately. And I feel this could have been avoided if you had maybe structured it out a little bit differently. Because this movie, at various times, doesn't know what its focus wants to be. Does it want to be Sam Worthington and kind of relating to all of the drastic changes he's going through physically, mentally, emotionally as he's turning into this new breed of human? Does it want to focus on his wife, played by Piper from Orange is the New Black? Does it want to focus on like her resolve or her determination to get her husband through this ordeal? Does it want to focus on Tom Wilkinson and whether or not he is an evil person or just an incompetent person? This movie doesn't know what it wants to do. I was kind of very, very let down by how predictable it was. Like, I was at least hoping like for some kind of twist, some kind of ulterior plot to rear its head, because I'm like, there's no way it can just be these people have no fucking idea what they're doing. And guess what? They have no fucking idea what they're doing. And you know what? That inherently isn't bad in and of itself. Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, David Cronenberg's remake of The Fly. That is basically about a scientist getting into some advanced science that he isn't 100% on top of. You know, he has no idea what he's in for. And you're along with that experience. This kind of has comparisons to The Fly, only surface level in the fact that people go through these horrific physical changes. But with The Fly, at least, you sympathize with the character of Brundle. You sympathize with the fact that, oh, he bit off more than he could chew with this daunting task of his science. And it's cost him dearly. And you feel that tragedy. You feel that heartache. You feel that unbelievable, woeful sadness at the end with him and Geena Davis and a shotgun. Here, I don't feel any of that towards anybody. Tom Wilkinson, for starters, because he's my major issue with this movie. He plays this scientist, this head researcher, whose idea for basically hyping up evolution to make humans able to tolerate Titan's atmosphere. This is his baby. He is so self-assured. He is so cocksure and so arrogantly like gung-ho about this idea that even when it proves in the end that he is ultimately the one who fucked up Royal, he stands by this 100%. At least Seth Brundle in The Fly, before he goes into his full animal, fly brain mentality, he's like, oh, God, this is a little terrifying. And then he gets into more of the instinctual stuff. Tom Wilkinson doesn't have that excuse. Nothing horribly mutating happens to him in this movie. He is just the asshole who... Alright, I'll come back to Tom Wilkinson. Sam Worthington, because we need to talk about Sam Worthington in this movie. Man, has he had kind of a rough go of things when it comes to finding success as a lead or success in some kind of franchise of his own. I think the only thing he could really attest to being a success is Avatar. A lot of that isn't really relying on his performance. For Avatar, it was all the spectacle. It was all of the fascinating 3D stuff you could do with that movie, and he is just kind of a prop in that movie. There's nothing spectacular about his performance in Avatar. There really hasn't been anything spectacular about his performance in any of his movies. Sorry, Sam. But he seems like a cool guy. He seems like he can get a glimmer of something going at times in some of the movies. But here, I feel really bad because he's given absolutely nothing to work with. For all intents and purposes, he is the focal point of this movie, and they give him nothing else to do except blindly follow this program and just work through prosthetics. And I'll give him this. When he goes into full-on Moon Man mutation, that's what I'm calling it, Moon Man mutation, or I guess Bat Boy mutation, he does a good job. I'll give him this. This is like the one silver lining I found in this movie, is that his ability to work through these prosthetics, and he's mute for the most part, and he has to convey a lot through kind of just his movements and expressions. He's not bad. It works fine. It's not a big daunting Doug Jones-ish Shape of Water type of transformation, but he does fine for what it is. So there's the one amount of kudos I'll give this movie. There is so much here that if you just took... It literally at times just took me 5 seconds to immediately dissect and take apart any amount of tension or logic in the scene. Right from the get-go, with this program, I'm like, okay, so you're injecting these people with a dangerous cocktail of God knows what. It turns out it's animal DNA and whatever else, enzymes, like I said, to speed up or mutate the human evolutionary process. And you have no idea what the physical changes are going to be, what the mental, emotional shifts are going to be. They say this in the movie. Tom Wilkinson at one point even just admits, he's like, this is uncharted waters. I have no idea what we're heading towards. They think the best thing to do is, you know what? Have these people bring their families. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? It's not like one of them who's mentally unstable and is turning into one of these monster hybrid things will throw his wife through a window. Or it's not like one of the other ones who's feeling, I guess, the mating call towards Sam Worthington will just kill her husband because she's far more evolved. This movie was dumb. It was so stupid. And it was kind of frustrating because there's potential in this idea of like, oh, cool. I've never seen this idea of, before we even colonize a planet, let's adapt ourselves. You see, I mean, that's what astronauts kind of go through anyways for space travel or for, moon landings, is they have to put themselves through these physical extremes. Sure, but this is the idea of like acclimating your body to a completely different environment to stay long term. That's interesting, but they don't do anything interesting with it for the sake of, we can kind of be like The Fly. We can kind of be like Extro, except not cool and not visually stunning. And guess what? No matter how much everyone's like poo-pooing on Tom Wilkinson in this movie and being like, you've gone too far, you're crazy, like you're completely devoid of ethics, they do it anyway in the end. At the end of this, Piper from Orange is the New Black, Sam Worthington's wife, is the head of a new Titan program somewhere, and they shipped his ass off to Titan. Spoilers! Sorry! But it's completely pointless for you to watch this movie, so I'm just gonna tell you. They send him to Titan, and he looks like one of the engineers from Prometheus, just standing on a cliff, and he's as smooth as a Ken doll. Apparently, that's what evolution does to you people. It gets rid of your dick. And he jumps off a cliff and flies off with his bat wings. And I'm guessing before the screen cuts to black, he runs into Thanos. And Thanos is like, you guys have an overpopulation issue? This movie was so dumb. I was laughing uproariously at times because there are points where just stupid things. Like, there's a point where Tom Wilkinson's like, this is our last resort. Abigail, that's the name of Taylor Schilling's character, Piper's character, Abigail. He's like, he'll listen to you. They've contained him at this point, but he's resisting them. And so basically they want her to give him an injection that will wipe his memories, because the government has this it's never been established before, right? They just have a solution that will give him a chemical lobotomy, essentially. And they just happen to place this chemical solution conveniently next to vials of saline, which will do nothing. And she just happens to accidentally drop the solution before she puts it in the injector. The colonel, stupid enough to just pick it up for her, doesn't see what she's doing with her other hand, and just gives her the injector and is like, here, I'm sure you'll load up the right vial that you totally didn't lift from the saline. Like, again, I know, I understand suspension of disbelief is needed in movies, but ultimately, when the guy you're touting up as the villain in this picture, when you ultimately just prove him right in the end, what is the point of the journey? Yeah, he's a dick, he's an asshole, and it's clear he had no clue what he was doing this entire time with this procedure, but when the ending scene of your movie is like, oh, well, he was right all along, what were we worrying about? It is astonishingly bad. It is just an excuse to put Sam Worthington in heavy prosthetics, to have a little bit of Cronenbergish type body horror without any of the actual intensity of Cronenberg body horror. It is an interesting idea that gets muddled in bullshit. Like I said, the silver lining is Sam Worthington is okay playing a silent moon man. I feel so stupid saying that. Okay, I'll give it another kudos. There are some interesting ideas early on in the movie when they first are injected with this stuff and you don't see the initial effects. There's a cool scene where you find out they can hold in their breath for about 40 minutes underwater. And it's just him sitting at the bottom of a pool with one of the other volunteers, one of the other program recruits. And they're just sitting there, no bubbles coming out of their mouth, sitting peacefully, tranquilly, and they're just like signing to each other. Like she's just like, and he's just like, and then she's like, I like that. It's a little bit of character development that's never brought back. It's a little cool interaction that's stylistically done very well. So aside from that scene and Sam Worthington looking like a moon man, there's nothing really else to this movie. Like I said, the scenarios I was anticipating to be revealed were far more interesting than what actually happens. There's a point where Sam Worthington and his wife get it on in the pool, and I was like, well, she's going to become pregnant and have one of the mutated things in her. Never happens. never brought up. And that's another thing too. It's like, why, if you're having people undergoing massive chemical injections that will alter their genes and DNA, why would you bring their families into this? And why would you not like heavily enforce the idea of quarantine, of isolation a little bit, of hey, no hanky panky, because we have no idea what these changes to your genetics will do to a zygote. I just keep remembering flashes of stupid now as I continue talking about this movie. When Sam Worthington and other person have become fully realized Titan Moon Men, they're like, they can go home for 2 days, and then we'll bring them to the launch site. And I'm just like, really? Really? You just massively butchered and surgically altered these people. There's no psych follow-up. There's no like physical kind of like, you know what? Let's make sure they're 100% tip-top shape. And you're like, just send them home with a family for a couple of days. They'll be fine. Fuck you, movie. If you're looking for an actual interesting story, this movie doesn't have it. If you're looking to laugh your ass off at total inept storytelling and a very interesting premise undone by lack of focus, have at Titan, sure. There, I recommend the movie, kinda, sort of. This is definitely going on one of my worst of the year, just because there was potential here. There was promise for this idea. I do like the idea of humanity is going to try to evolve itself in order to reach the stars, instead of like humanity just going as is and trying to evolve the planet. That's an interesting angle I don't believe I've seen before in science fiction cinema. And if I have, I'm sorry I subdued it so bad into my subconscious, because I'm sure it was done way better than it was here. The way it is, the Titan is a mess. It is absolutely kind of a mess. But if you got a Netflix subscription, it's free, so really there's no excuse for me to not say, just check it out and chuckle and kind of have an absurd laugh. I am going to continue to evolve on this Memorial Day with more red wine.